Hi everyone, welcome to our first lecture video for U.S. History 106 at Crowder College. My name is Mr. Christensen. I'm going to be your historical guide as we work our way through the early parts of American history, covering pre-European contact up through Reconstruction following the American Civil War. So the way these lectures are going to be structured is I'm going to kind of break them into individual segments, a little bit more digestible chunks. That way you aren't sitting here watching a 30, 45-minute lecture. Instead, you're only going to get about like 5 to 15 slides per video and kind of just like here's a basics and like deep dive, but not overwhelming. So you can break up the notes into smaller, more digestible chunks. So our first chapter is Old Worlds and New. So a lot of this is going to be looking at pre-English contact in North America. So our learning objectives, and allow me to just reduce the size of my bubble real quick so we can see the learning objectives. We're going to analyze the diversity of indigenous societies in the Americas prior to European contact. We're also going to evaluate the significance of environmental factors, explain the development and characteristics of pre-Columbian civilizations, and assess the causes and consequences of early transatlantic exploration, and examine the initial contact between Europeans and indigenous people. Primarily, this chapter looks at the Spanish, the French, and the Dutch. And we're also going to interpret the concept of freedom in the context of early encounters between those European empires and Native Americans. So here's our list of readings for this week. This is also all posted on Canvas, so feel free to go take a look at this. The big thing you need to do is read chapter 1 in our textbook, which I happen to have right here. It looks like this. It's this lovely red book right here. Please make sure you read chapter 1. But otherwise, these other primary sources, you're welcome to read those if you want. They are by no means a requirement, though. They might help increase your understanding of module materials, and you will be looking at some of them for the 2 assignments that we have this week. So let's dive in. Our old world, I keep making that mistake, North America. So settling in the Americas. So the big thing to keep in mind here, like going way back, we're going way back in human history, is there used to be a land bridge connecting across the Bering Strait. So, Russia and Alaska used to be connected. But later on, that's going to be submerged after the Ice Age when we get to a warming period. Now, this goes towards an ancient homeland to Native Americans that is actually developing at around the same rate as Mesopotamia. So if you've taken like a Western Civ class or a world history and you've talked about the Middle East and like that being considered the birthplace of civilization as we know it, well, that's not entirely accurate because we have native populations that are about the same rate of advancement here in the Americas at that point. Around 950, there are going to be some expansion of agriculture in cities. This is due to one of the warming periods. Large-scale farming is going to make urban living possible. And one of the big ones in the Mississippi River Delta is Cahokia. This is actually located near St. Louis. It's a major manufacturing and trading center where they build these giant mounds that are the base for their leaders. You can actually still visit the main one in St. Louis today. That is what's pictured here. The Puebloans and the Huagam are building irrigation systems in the southwest, and they're building great plant towns. But all this becomes a little bit difficult when we get to the Little Ice Age. Like we have the big one, think like the one you see in the movie Ice Age. We have a warming period, and then we have like a mini one that comes back. So agriculture becomes more difficult. People move from major cities to smaller towns. These are the pueblos. And they're going to embrace a more egalitarian system of rule, like more like local based, not these big things. But in the American Northeast, we have the Great League of Peace. These are 5 major nations known as the Haudenosaunee, or the people of the Longhouse. This is going to be a major political entity, especially as we get into European contact in like New England. So you're going to hear me talk about them a lot over the next few chapters. Now they're going to coordinate their dealings with outsiders and basically have like here's our basic standard protocol for interacting with people that are not us. The American Southwest will also form loose alliances as well, but not as impactful as the Haudenosaunee. Economics and trade, they're pretty much led by persuasion and reciprocity. There's massive exchange networks of trade, seeing various goods moving from one location to the other, various land systems in place that honor the land. They're not devoted to the accumulation of wealth and material goods. That's like the big thing to keep in mind here as we get closer and closer to European contact. However, social status did still remain, and gift giving was essential through elaborate ceremonies. A lot of what we're going to see here is native groups like massively embrace the idea of giving gifts of like as a sign of respect, but it's not about who can have the most of a certain item. Society is still highly gendered, but compared to European society, native societies in general are a lot more equal than European societies. Women played a massive role in most native communities, whether that be serving in leadership roles or being the guiding factors for agriculture or hunting. Native women actually played a massive role in their societal development versus European women that are kind of relegated to this second class status of being in the home and having babies. In terms of religion, this is like a big thing. There is no way to just simply narrow this down. Like, here's this specific religion, like we could talk about Christianity or Judaism, like in Europe and the Middle East. When it comes to native religions, each one is slightly different. Their lives were heavily steeped in religious practices, which is a very generic statement to say. They did believe in spiritual power that was everywhere, and their religions included everyone. They didn't exclude anybody. But the big thing to keep in mind here is like the way that they view themselves and their religion varied from group to group, and it varied from region to region. A tribe in the Northeast, I'll use the Mohawks as an example, is not going to have the same religious setup and like belief system as the Pueblos in the American Southwest. While there may be elements that are similar, they aren't going to necessarily be identical or have a lot of overlapping narratives. Slavery and freedom. They did have liberty and freedom. And slavery was actually not allowed in the Haudenosaunee. But Europeans are going to be like, they don't have those words. They consider natives to be barbaric because they didn't live under an established government that they recognized. Their modern definition of freedom, because it's going to mean little to them, they had their own definitions and held themselves to a high standard of appropriate behavior. So that kind of contributes to some later clashes. And it is important to point out that they did practice small scale slavery. It's not like the slave trade that we would talk about in terms of like that we'll talk about in later videos. These are mostly people captured during war. But there was a road to freedom, and they couldn't be inherited by others as property. So like they did still maintain an opportunity to gain their freedom and like potentially join the community that they were enslaved to. All right, that is it for this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Honestly, this may be a good point to jump over and go do your creation myth analysis if you want to go do that real quick and then come back. I'll see you next time. Bye.